This story is about family, fights about money and the family house, and the journey to understanding and forgiveness. David and his sister Clara fight over their parents' old house and the money it could bring. Through anger, secrets, and unexpected twists, they slowly remember the importance of family and trust. Listen and let this touching story also help you improve your English. There is a man named David. He is 40 years old, quiet, and usually avoids fights. He works as a bus driver. Every day he drives people around the city and listens to the sound of the engine. In his free time, he likes to fix old radios and clocks. He enjoys when things work again, ticking and shining like new. David has one younger sister, Clara. She is 35, smart, and quick with words. Sometimes too quick. David and Clara were close when they were children. They shared toys, secrets, and even their fears. But as adults, they grew apart. Their lives were very different. David liked order, calm, and peace. Clara liked big plans, strong opinions, and sometimes even a little drama. Their parents had passed away some years ago, but they left behind something important. A big old house on the edge of town. The house was full of memories, family dinners, birthdays, and Christmas mornings. But now it was also full of questions. Who should live there? Who should sell it? Who should get the money? And this is where the real story begins. One cold Monday morning, David received a letter. It was from Clara. The paper smelled like strong perfume, and the words were short. We need to talk about the house. Meet me there on Saturday. David sighed. He knew this day would come. The house had stood empty for 2 years, waiting for a decision. He put the letter in his pocket and went to work, but he could not stop thinking about it. On Saturday, David arrived first. The big house looked tired. Paint was falling from the walls, the garden was full of weeds, and one window was broken. Still, when David touched the old door, he remembered the smell of his mother's cooking and his father's deep laugh. For a moment, he felt like a boy again. Then a car stopped outside. Clara stepped out, wearing a bright red coat and sunglasses. She looked like she was going to a party, not a family meeting. David, she said with a smile that was not really a smile. Let's talk. They walked into the living room. Dust danced in the sunlight. The old sofa was still there, covered with a white sheet. On the wall hung their parents' wedding photo. Clara crossed her arms. David, we can't keep this house like a museum. It's falling apart. I say we sell it and share the money. David shook his head. No. This house is part of our family. We grew up here. I don't want to sell it. Clara laughed, but it was not a happy laugh. And what will you do with it? Plant flowers? Invite ghosts to dinner? Be serious, David. We both need the money. David felt his face grow red. It's not about money. It's about respect. Respect for Mom and Dad. Clara leaned closer. Respect doesn't fix broken windows. Respect doesn't pay bills. Be practical, brother. For a moment, silence filled the room. The ticking clock on the wall was the only sound. David wanted to say more, but the words stuck in his throat. David sat down on the old sofa, trying to calm himself. But Clara kept walking around the room like a cat that could not sit still. You always do this, she said. You hide from real life. You drive your bus. You fix your silly radios, and you dream about the past. But life is not a dream, David. It is money and choices and moving forward. David's hands clenched into fists. And you always think money will solve everything. But money can't bring back love. It can't bring back Mom's smile or Dad's voice. Clara rolled her eyes. Oh, please, don't start with your soft heart again. We're not children anymore. David stood up. His voice shook. And maybe that's the problem, Clara. You forgot what it feels like to care. For a second, Clara looked almost hurt. But then she quickly smiled, sharp and cold. Fine. If you won't agree, Then maybe I'll take my part of the house without asking you. David froze. What do you mean by that? Clara leaned against the window, her red coat bright, in the dusty room. I talked to a buyer, she said calmly. He is ready to pay a good price for the house. If you don't agree, I'll take my share through the court. David felt as if the floor moved under him. You already found a buyer? Without even asking me. Clara shrugged. Why not? Someone has to make decisions. You would sit here forever, dreaming about old birthdays and Christmas trees. Meanwhile, the roof falls in. David's chest burned with anger. This is not only your house. It's mine too. You can't just sell it like a dress you don't like anymore. Clara's voice grew sharp. Watch me. For a long moment, they stared at each other, brother and sister, like two strangers. The air was heavy. Then David looked away, his eyes on the photo of their parents. Their smiling faces seemed to watch the fight. And for the first time, David wondered what his parents would say if they were still alive. The silence was heavy, until David spoke in a quiet voice. Do you remember Dad's birthday? The year the cake fell on the floor. Clara blinked, surprised. Of course I do. You dropped it, and I laughed so hard I couldn't breathe. For a second, both of them smiled. The picture of their father, laughing with cream on his shoes, was still clear in their minds. David said softly, he didn't care about the cake. He cared that we were together. That's what this house meant to him. Clara's smile faded. She looked down at her hands. Yes, but that was long ago. Things change, David. People change. Houses fall apart. Her voice shook, and for a moment she didn't sound so strong. David almost reached out to touch her arm. But then Clara quickly stood up straighter, her face cold again. Don't try to stop me with old stories. I want my part, and I will get it. The short warmth between them vanished, like a candle in the wind. Clara walked slowly to the old cupboard in the corner. She pulled out a small folder and dropped it on the dusty table. What's that? David asked. Clara tapped the folder. The will. I went to the lawyer last week. Did you even know Dad changed it before he died? David's eyes widened. Changed it? No. I thought everything was 50-50. Clara smiled, but there was no joy in it. That's what you thought. But Dad wanted me to have the bigger part. He wrote that I should own 60% of the house. You only get 40. David felt heat rush into his face. That's impossible. Dad would never do that. He loved us equally. Clara opened the folder and slid a paper toward him. Read it yourself. David stared at the paper. The handwriting looked like their father's. The lawyer's stamp was there too. His hands trembled as he held it. If this was true, everything he believed about fairness in the family was broken. David pushed the paper back across the table. His voice was low but sharp. This doesn't feel right. Dad would never write something like this. Not without telling me. Clara crossed her arms. Maybe he trusted me more. Maybe he thought you couldn't handle responsibility. David's eyes flashed. Or maybe you're lying. Clara gasped, her cheeks turning red. How dare you? You think I forged a will? That I tricked a lawyer? David leaned closer. I don't know what you did, Clara, but something smells wrong here. Dad was always fair. He never gave one of us more than the other. Not in games, not in gifts, not in love. Clara's lips pressed tight. Believe what you want. The paper is real, and the law is on my side. David turned away, his hands shaking. He wanted to shout, to break something, but instead he stared at the cracked window. Outside, the garden was wild, like no one had cared for it in years. Just like this family. David and Clara stood in the middle of the living room, voices rising. You always think you're smarter than everyone. David shouted. You never listen. You only care about money and your own plans. Clara's face turned red. And you think being quiet and polite will fix everything? You hide behind your little life and your old radios, pretending the world doesn't exist. David took a deep breath, but the words came anyway. You ruined us, Clara. We were a family, and now you only see a house and money. Clara laughed, but it was bitter. Ruined? I am trying to survive. David, maybe you should wake up. For a moment, both stopped, breathing hard. Dust fell from the ceiling. Outside, the wind rattled the broken window. Then Clara said quietly, almost like a whisper, Maybe Dad wanted me to wake you up too. Maybe this fight is for you to finally see life as it is. David blinked, shocked. Could she be serious? Or was it another trick? The room was tense, the air thick with anger. David rubbed his forehead, feeling tired and frustrated. Clara paced back and forth, still frowning. Then something unexpected happened. A small clock on the wall fell off its hook and hit the floor with a loud clink. Both of them jumped. David looked at the broken clock and said, Well, I guess someone doesn't like us fighting. Clara couldn't help it. She laughed. A short, sharp laugh, but real. Maybe the ghosts of Mom and Dad want to join our argument, she joked. David shook his head, a smile breaking through his anger. Or maybe even the furniture is tired of us. For a few minutes, they just looked at the mess and laughed quietly. It didn't solve anything, but it made the room feel lighter. Then Clara's smile faded. Okay, enough laughing. We still have serious business. David nodded, and the tension returned, heavier than before. David wandered to the fireplace, brushing dust off the mantel. His eyes caught something sticking out from behind an old photo frame. He pulled it out, a folded envelope, yellowed with age. Clara noticed. What is that? David opened it carefully. Inside was a letter, written in their father's handwriting. But it was not about money or the house. He read aloud slowly. To my children, David and Clara, if you ever fight over my house, remember that the real treasure is not the walls or money, but your bond as siblings. Take care of each other. Clara leaned closer, her eyes wide. So, Dad knew we would fight. David nodded. Yes, and he wanted us to see something important before it's too late. For a moment, the room was silent. The weight of their anger felt smaller, almost ridiculous. But the tension did not disappear completely. Clara whispered, Maybe we need to think again about the house. David looked at her, surprised by her tone. Could she really mean it? David and Clara sat on the old sofa, the yellowed letter between them. For the first time, they spoke calmly, trying to find a solution. I don't want to sell the house if it breaks us, David said. Maybe we can share it, or fix it together. Clara nodded slowly. I want the money too, but maybe there is a way to do both. Just then, David's phone rang. It was the lawyer. Hello, Mr. David? I have some news about your parents' estate. It seems there is another will, a newer one, from just before your father passed. David's stomach dropped. Another will? Yes, the lawyer said. It changes everything. You need to come to the office as soon as possible. Clara looked shocked. Another one? How is that possible? David stared at her. The quiet hope they had felt moments ago vanished. Now the fight could start all over, or something even stranger could happen. The next day, David and Clara went together to the lawyer's office. Their hearts were heavy, but curiosity pushed them forward. The lawyer handed them a sealed envelope. This is your father's last will. It was signed a week before he passed. Read it carefully. David opened it slowly. Both of them leaned over the paper. Then David read aloud, To my children, David and Clara, I leave the house and all property equally to both of you. But there is one condition. You must share it and make decisions together. Only if you can't agree may the house be sold. Clara's mouth fell open. Wait, so all that fighting was for nothing? David shook his head, a mixture of relief and disbelief on his face. It seems Dad wanted us to learn something. About trust. About family. They looked at each other. The anger and suspicion still lingered, but now there was also a strange sense of understanding. David and Clara walked back into the old house. The sunlight shone through the broken window, dust sparkling in the air. For the first time in months, the house felt like home again. "I guess we have to fix everything together," David said, smiling faintly. "The roof, the garden, even the clocks." Clara laughed softly. "Yes, and maybe we'll argue a little less this time." They started planning. Clara would handle some repairs. David would fix the old furniture and clocks. They would take turns cleaning, cooking, and making decisions together. The house was still old and messy, but now it was full of hope. David realized that money was never the real treasure. It was this, working together, remembering their past, and slowly rebuilding their bond. For the first time, David felt calm, and he noticed Clara looking at him differently, less like a rival, more like a sister again. Weeks passed. The house slowly became livable again. Paint was fresh on the walls, flowers grew in the garden, and the old clocks ticked happily in every room. David and Clara still argued sometimes, but now it was different. They listened more, remembered the letter from their father, and laughed at small mistakes. Even the broken window became a funny story they told visitors. One evening, David found the old photo of their parents on the mantel. He smiled and whispered, "I hope we made you proud." Clara stood beside him and nodded. "We did, and we will keep trying." The house was more than walls and money. It was a place of memories, lessons, and family. David realized that some fights were worth having, if they led to understanding. And as the sun set behind the trees, the two siblings sat together, finally at peace, knowing that even after quarrels and sadness, love could remain.